Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome back to J-Raid and welcome to another raid challenge video. And in today's video, I want to break down for you guys the new coalition event and showcase some of my teams that I was able to easily clear through all of the coalition event pretty much on the first day. So let's break down a little bit of what this newest coalition event is. It is basically a demon boss, demon lord, just kind of expanded on a little bit. And structurally, it's very similar to every other coalition event we've had, but with a few pretty big differences. So the things that have remained consistent are, the overall global multipliers that go from 1 to 2x points, and you get, some free rewards as a whole, which, you have one ancient, one sacred, a legendary book, and a 5-star chicken. So some really good rewards just in terms of everyone completing the event. Now, the bottom is still very similar, but I think has some really cool rewards as well. So now, instead of having 100 mythical fragments at the very end, we have a 5-star basalt, which is incredible. That is really, really, really high value to have in any sort of reward. And then we still have 50 mythical fragments here. So it's still the same where you do need 10,000 points at least in order to get the maximum amount of rewards. But the big difference here is instead of having like a mission system and having like the weekly rewards, the daily resets, the spend X amount of energy doing X thing, we have a little bit differently where we have 5 different stages of demon boss, and I think it's the same boss over all 5 stages. So the difficulty wise, it's all the same, but there are going to be different conditions for each of these stages, such as what factions you can use, as well as what affinity champions you can use. Now, the boss itself is only going to be void, so there's never going to be any sort of affinity issue that like really screws you over. So in that case, I think it is quite forgiving, but I think that the level of this event might be a little bit trickier than some of the past coalition events we had because it introduces some of these restrictions. Now, for points, you have 2 ways of earning points for each stage. You have a one-time reward of 4 different checkpoints. So for example, in stage 2, once you hit 500,000 damage, you'll get 150 points. For 2 million, you get 350 points. For 85 million, you'll get 750 points. And then for every stage, this bottom part is the same, where you will earn 5 extra points per 1 million damage past this last threshold. So theoretically, you could earn all 10,000 points in one stage if you certainly had the champions and gear sets to do so. But in total, if you add up all of the guaranteed rewards, the one-time checkpoints across all 5 of these stages, there will be exactly 10,000 points. Which means that if you are able to get to 85 million damage in every stage, you will have essentially completed the event. And there is some leeway, so you can earn additional points down here for going past the 85 million. And for every amount of extra points you earn, that could be, the hardest stage knocked off, right? Instead of needing to hit the 85 million, let's say you can't do that with the affinity, you can make that up through other stages by simply dealing more damage, especially for some of the earlier ones where the restrictions are a lot less. And you'll even see here, I earned an additional 4,000 points in stage 1. And we'll talk a little bit about how that was possible. Let's see if there's any boss. No, there's really no boss information. So we'll just jump into it and we'll kind of showcase what is going on. And let me just make sure that I'll just switch things up a little bit just to make sure that I have what I want on here. And we'll kind of talk a little bit about the overall strategies and what kind of approach you should take in order to maximize your damage at this boss. So let me just make sure that I have all my gear that I want. And I might swap out someone for Opridin just to kind of showcase for you guys. Wherever he is, I should have just searched by his name. There we go. The issue is, ooh, I only have, let's see. Okay, let's put on a different protection set onto him then. Let's put on my second protection set down here. Oh, but this might share boots. We'll see. Let's see if this isn't. And then we'll put our second protection set on our Senna. And good. Now everyone should have gear on. And then I will switch out Mad Hatter for Oberden. That looks fine. We can even turn this off if we want. So we'll just talk a little bit about the boss and what it does. And really, it's basically the same as Demon Lord with a few exceptions. So I'll let this run in the background while I quickly talk about what's going on. So very similar to the Demon Lord, he has this AoE hit that that has a debuff. In this case, there's no like different affinity, so there's no like decreased speed, decreased attack, whatever it might be. So instead, the debuff that applies here is Master Seal. And Master Seal basically just prevents your gear sets from having any use, but it's only a 1-turn debuff, right? And then he still has this ability, which is just another AoE that places block buffs and decreased speed for 2 turns. And then, he has his single target stun, right? But this stun also depletes turn meter. So ability wise, it's, basically the same. And he does have 2 different passives here. Of course, as any any boss these days does. But he has a damage cap on things like reflect damage, max HP, HP burns, poisons, things like that. And smite is capped at, the brimstone is capped at 250,000. So, fairly just kind of whatever. Max HP attacks are definitely a lot worse here. So if you wanted to bring in someone like Marius, someone like Newt, someone like who's Cecilia, somebody like, whoever it is does max HP, they're not going to be as effective. And that's the same for Demon Lord anyway, right? You don't really see those champions being used in specifically Demon. And then finally, we have a slightly different ability here. I don't know, because I haven't actually read the Demon Lord passive. Maybe it's the same. But what happens here is the Demon Lord will start scaling its attack, its stats, defense, speed, resistance, accuracy, as well as the attack every turn, right? So progressively, the fight gets harder and harder, with after the 20th turn, the Demon Lord gains stats a lot quicker. And then from the 20th turn, the Demon Lord will ignore block damage and killable shield. And then after the 30th turn, they will just reduce all shield buffs on all targets. So this is a nod to, Titus teams, right? Where after 30 turns, if you do make it that far, it'll just wipe out all your shields, and then you're pretty much out of damage. That's not to say that he won't just kill you through shields either. So that is a consideration that needs to be put in place. But really, I think it is not super difficult to survive to 30 turns if you have some level of support champions within your team. Most noticeably, the Demon Lord will not actually hit through ally protection. So that is one buff that is extremely valuable in this sort of situation. Oh, actually, I don't have Weaken in this team. I might have to take out my Krisk. We're just going to take out our Krisk real quick. But let me just... Oh, my ninja has no gear. That's kind of embarrassing as well. Let's put this on. And then, so now that we know what is going on, well, we can talk a little bit more about the overall strategy. And we'll just go 1, 2 here. And we're good. So what is the big difference in this Demon Lord is, I think, the amount of time that you have to dish out damage. So normally, you get up to 50 turns, and then past that, you have your own ways of kind of cheating the system, either through shield or whatnot, and then you get capped at 1500 turns if you are able to make it that far. But in this case, once you get to 30 turns, the Demon Lord is going to start pummeling your team quite hard. And then, he'll ignore things like shields, block damage, unkillable, things like that. And normally the Demon Lord will ignore that starting turn 50, right? But I think he doesn't hit their shields. So what you have to do is you have to take those first 30 turns or even 20 turns if that's all you can survive to, and you have to make sure that you can dish out the most amount of damage in those 20 turns. And what you have to do is you really have to bring in champions that will either do two things. I think the most effective champions are in this game mode champions with ally attacks or champions with passives that boost turn meter. So of course in this stage where there's no restrictions, champions like Senna, champions like Operdin, right, who have passives that will boost turn meter with no like downside, right? So I'm able to take so many turns before clan boss takes, or the Demon Lord takes one turn, right? I've dished out 22 million damage here, and the boss hasn't taken a turn, right? Because I've just been cycling turns super fast. So that's one good thing about this game mode, is very similar to Chimera. There is no punishment for taking too many turns. Well, actually, that's not true because Chimera is also turn capped. I assume this game mode is also turn capped if you can hit it, but that's a lot harder because, again, you only have 30 turns, give or take. But champions that can have passives that boost turn meter considerably, allowing you to take many more turns, are very, very effective in this game mode. The second thing that you should look out for is, of course, sets like Relentless that give you extra turns, relics like the Perch Shadow that give you extra turns, gear sets like 9-piece Merciless that give you extra turns, or champions that can abuse like ally attacks, especially having things like reflex sets or impulse sets, just to make sure that you are cycling through your ally attacks and your abilities to make sure that your damage dealers get more hits. So this is the kind of crux of it. Again, just across the board, very similar to Clan Boss, where it doesn't really have much defense. Of course, he does scale defense over the course of the turns, but very importantly, you want to make sure you have weaken up there. You want to make sure that you have some amount of sustain, whether that be through heals or leech or something like that. And you want to make sure that you can be cycling through your turns as fast as possible. And that's pretty much it, really. It shares a lot of similarities to the regular Demon Lord clan boss, given, this is the first stage, right? So once you get to more restricted stages, then your champion pools are starting to become more limited, and then we'll talk about what sort of things that we can do in order to squeeze out the most damage, even if now we're in factions who don't have ways of granting a lot of turn meter, or maybe you just don't have the very, very limited and specific champions that will allow you to do so. And so we've seen here, we've dealt 70 million damage in 2 turns, right? And again, the last milestone here is 85 million. And then every million past that, you'll gain a few extra turns or a few extra points. So I might actually just rerun this on my own time, but this is just a quick example of what you're trying to do, right? Because once you hit to that boss turn 30 or 20 or past 20, right, starts scaling out faster. And then if you don't really have much protection past 30, then you're going to wipe pretty soon after that. But again, this is the gist of things. I'm just running it as we go. I have a 9-piece protection set on both my Operdin and my Senna. I do have a 9-piece protection set on my Lady Mikage, but I will switch that out into a 4-piece Merciless as well as a 4-piece Relentless later, when I do actually want to rerun this. And then I have a 4-piece Reflex set on my on my Mad Hatter in order to cycle to his turn meter boost faster. I wonder how much damage I could do. This probably will go past 1 billion, but I'll rerun this on my own time. So no, I won't make you guys sit through this, but again, I think I could probably easily just beat my old score of, I think, what was my old score? Let's see. My old score was 918 million. And let's see, let's talk about some of the other stages. Let's talk about, here we have stage 2, which is Sacred Order, Lizardmen, Sylvan Watchers, as well as Undead Horde. So I ran this team here, and let me just take some champions out so you can see all the options here. Let me get rid of my face as well for time being. So just looking at the champ pools we have here, you want to think about, okay, I want to make sure I have weaken. I want to make sure I have a good damage dealer. And then I want to make sure I have champions that can abuse things like Relentless sets or things like 9-piece Merciless, and, things like that, right? So off the bat, in terms of actual damage dealers, honestly, it's kind of a little bit limited. I think you have like Rhodos, for example. I think he can be decent. One thing to consider is that poisons are capped at 25,000 damage in this game mode. So someone like a Ezio, while they can do decent damage, they're capped a lot by the amount of damage that their poison does. So he's a lot worse in this Demon Lord than in regular Demon Lord. I have Aelil, but that's not very good against Clan Boss. I have Fenax, which did decent damage, and I'll show you how much damage he did. You could use someone like Ruella, someone like Miss Rider Dathi, right? Miss Rider Dathi has a lot of extra turns, so he's fantastic to use. I know that Ruella just hits really hard. But really your options are fairly limited in terms of damage dealers. I think I did also use Catacomb Counselor here for the ally attack, which is quite nice. So putting Catacomb Counselor in something like a Relentless set or a Impulse set or a Reflex set just to get back to that ally attack is very, very helpful. Brimstone is also quite nice given that, it's a free 250k damage and you have about 30 turns, maybe a third of those can proc Brimstone, so that's a free 7 million damage over your course of your 30 turns if you have Brimstone. So make sure that's something you have in order to get some free damage out there. But this was a team that I used for that. It was right here, I just used Glaciad for the buffs. So I used Glaciad in a 9-piece protection set. He put out 4 buffs. That's 20% additional damage. I used Krisk. He had a 9-piece Feral set, places out 3 debuffs with the Brimstone, so that's 15% damage. And then I just had Fenax solo as the damage dealer. And, Fenax just hits really hard. And he was able to get me over the finish line. I was able to deal 102 million damage here, especially paired with the ally attacks from Catacomb Counselor. I think what champions, that would have been much better, I think there's really fairly limited ones. My clanmate here had Teox, and then, he had Paudrig, Ardiel for the ally attacks. So just, the whole point is to cycle through turns, would that be the ally attacks, and get, more hits through Teox. Now, he did have 2 speed sets here. If those were 2 impulse sets instead, I think that would have been a lot better as well. But you guys can start to see the sort of pattern here in terms of how you can be maximizing your damage. Now, stage 3, we have High Elves, Orcs, Dark Elves, and Argonites, funnily enough. Let's see what I did here. I think this is an interesting one. Of course, when you do have Orcs, the first thing that kind of comes into mind for bossing is the Shayak plus the Dog combo. And then you have Dark Elves, which gives you some very nice support champions in Mithrala, as well as the Lydia. There you go. But again, I think your choices can be quite limited. I just threw in Solnar as a second damage dealer, but somebody like, let's see, we have like Knock the Paralyzer. He can put out a lot of poison debuffs, and that might be a decent way to get a little bit more damage in. You have, who do I have? You could put in someone like a Prisma who has an ally attack, so that can help you to chip in some more damage. He could be a good candidate for something like a Reflex set, for example. The big ticket champion here. Oh, you could even throw in the newest champion. What's his name? Elops with the magma shield, so that reflect damage can actually come in handy. But something to note is that the Demon Lord will actually ignore shields past turn 20, so that'll only be valid for the first 20 turns. But the real big ticket champion here, I could have used, maybe I'll throw in, I'll rerun this, but with the Xenomorph, and that'll give me a lot more poisons to maybe do better than Solnar in terms of damage. But the big ticket champion here is really Fina, right? Fina is one of the champions on the list of champions that can have ridiculous passives that boost turn meter, right? So whenever a buff is placed on ally, fill their turn meter by 3%. This is exactly the kind of passive you want on your team in order to cycle more turns and get more damage out of your early turns, right? If you don't have Fina, I think your damage output is going to be more limited, but that doesn't mean that you can't still hit something like 100 million damage fairly reasonably. I was able to hit 100 million damage with this team. As you can see, 66 mil of it came from Crocad, 20 mil of it came from Solnar, Mithrala with her poisons, and Brimstone did 10 million damage. So you guys can see how this damage can stack up over time. I will rerun this with, instead of Solnar, I'm going to use my Xenomorph, and maybe I can add another 10 million damage if I'm really, really into it like that. But again, if you don't have exactly Fina, I think this will be a little bit tricky to really pump out big numbers. Next stage, we have stage 4. So now we have another caveat where it's only these 4 factions. We have Bannerlords, we have Skinwalkers, we have Dwarves, and we have Shadowkin. And then it's only Force and Spirit. The good thing about this stage is we do have access to Lady Mikage, and then we even have someone like Tholen, so very nice combo to utilize in order to pump out some damage through the ally attacks, and then just having a good attack-based champion to kind of to take advantage of that. Also some fairly decent Shadowkin units in order to pair with Lady Mikage. So we have Kyoku, who you can use, bringing in that ally attack, or sorry, not the ally attack, but the ally protection, as well as the triple hitter and and the weaken. So that's something important to take note as well. She brings in good debuffs and buffs while dealing a decent amount of damage. If we weren't using Kyoku, we could throw in, I don't know, who else is a good one? You could use like Yukimasa, decent damage dealer as well. You can throw in, I don't know, like what's this guy's name? Fenshi? I think Fenshi could be okay as well. You have Sachi. You have some decent Shadowkin units out there, whatever you have access to, as long as you have Lady Mikage. You also have some decent ally attack options as well outside of Lady Mikage. We have Morag, who is a good candidate here as well in order to bring in more ally attacks. Who else is good in this list? I will point out Michelangelo, of course, he was a free champion, but he brings in the leech debuff, he brings in decrease attack, he brings in his own increase attack. So when he's a self buffer, he can't really run out of buffs when he is taking extra turns on his own, right? So the team that I use here also involve Nishak. Well, Nishak doesn't actually deal much damage because he's very poison capped, and poison doesn't deal much damage on the Tainted Demon Lord. I was able to put him in a 9-piece feral set, and he had like 6 poisons out there, which gave me additional 30% damage across my team. Most notably, there's not really that many good sort of support champions in this field. I think if I were to build out one champion in order to boost my team even further, that would be Great Hoof, the Risa. Not sure how you pronounce that, but she has this incredible passive that is fills. Oh, it's only this champion's turn meter. Oh, never mind. Fills this champion's turn meter by 5% each time an ally buff is. But then does she boost other? Okay, but she does boost other champions' turn meters, and she places block debuffs, which is quite nice in this game mode. Okay, I think she's okay. She can bring in some extra turn meter boost. You can then put her in like an impulse or a reflex set, and that can help you to cycle more turns. But you would have to book her out. You'd have to build her, and I'm really not about that right now. So the team that I used for this stage 4, I used this team right here that you guys saw. And Tholen did the most with 30 million damage. Very good champion against clan boss in terms of scaling his attack. He was in my standard sort of 6 merciless and 2 zeal, but you could play 9 merciless as well. I had Kyoku, who brought in almost 20 million damage. She has Brimstone, and I just threw in some random defense equipment. Lady Mikage here again was a 9-piece protection, but again, I think that specifically in this game mode, something like a Relentless set with a 4-piece Merciless is going to perform a lot better in order to cycle to her ally attacks a lot quicker. Michelangelo was in a 9-piece Merciless set. I think that fits very well, and he was able to dish out almost 20 million damage as well. And then even Nishak came in with 15 million damage, and that's pretty much just by placing bombs. Well, not even, you can't even place bombs because the debuff bar fills up really quickly, but that's just almost purely through poison damage. And I think Nishak hits decently hard, so make sure that you are crit capping all of your units in order to get the most out of it. But he came in with a 9-piece Feral, right? So what damage you don't see is he's boosting the damage of all of my other units or champions in order to get to that 90 million damage. And then finally, we have the very last condition here. We have stage 5, which is Barbarians, Ogren, Night Revenants, and Demon Spawn with Magic and Void. And we'll just take you out for now. Let's see. Let's talk about a few options. So damage dealers is, again, I think the big focus here, where I'm not sure. There's really not that many good damage dealers. You have Thor, which honestly isn't the best in terms of like single target damage. Much better against something like Hydra, where there's multiple heads. He has 2 very strong AoEs, but overall he's still very good. I think the biggest standout to me right now is Whisper. She fits into that line where she takes a bunch of extra turns. She brings in Weaken, and she hits fairly hard, right? So she's a very good candidate that I ended up using in my run. Ally attacks, another one that I'm very lucky to have. I do have Queen of Hearts. She brings both that turn meter increase as well as the ally attack that brings in increased attack as well as decreased defense. But I think the big ticket, or the big like golden ticket here, is Operdin. Now, Operdin was a fusion way back when, I think even before I started playing the game, or maybe sometime in between. But what makes him so good in this game mode is, if you guys repeat after me, the fact that he can fill allies' turn meters every time a continuous heal goes off. And this is very much in line with champions like Senna, right? Although Senna boosts for the entire team. But again, Operdin has this passive that is going to help your teammates take so many more turns because of how much turn meter he's giving, right? But in terms of actual synergy, I'm not sure if I have too many that give ally protect or more heals. I think you could even run like a second Operdin. I do have 2, but I only have 1 built. So running 2 Operdins, I think, could help you to just really get stuff done. But does anyone else actually bring in ally or continuous heals? Eurogrim places 1 continuous heal and 2 poisons. Not the worst. Prundar, does he do anything good? No. Honestly, Eurogrim, not the worst. You could put him in a 9-piece feral set, so he's, placing out poisons and then more poisons on his A1. So he can be fairly effective there and synergizes with your Operdin. So that could be a good combo if you do have him. And then I ran this team. I was running Ugo in a 9-piece feral instead, but now that I'm thinking about it, I think Eurogrim would be a much better fit here, and then I could rerun this and hopefully out. I was able to get almost 90 million damage. You can see Thor bring in about 40 of it. Whisper actually did 33, almost 34 million, which really surprised me given I just threw her into a random 4-piece Relentless, 4-piece Merciless build. And again, just because she was able to cycle so many turns, get through her abilities, she almost did as much damage as Thor, even though she's an epic. She doesn't have a better blessing. And yeah, Queen of Hearts came in. Of course, the ally attack boosts their damage. Ugo, I had in a 9-piece feral set, but I'll rerun this. Instead of Ugo, I will run my Eurogrim, and that should maybe bring my damage up by at least another 5 mil, maybe, depending on damage I can squeeze out. And yeah, of course, Operdin in a 9-piece protection set. But honestly, I think for specifically this, because it's only Operdin bringing in like the boosts, you could probably go into a into like a reflex set instead. I think reflex set or impulse would probably be better choice. And then I have Queen of Hearts in the Relentless set. So those are my teams that I was able to kind of breeze through. I did hit about 1.3 billion total damage. And the cool part about this event is, of course, yes, there's the top 100 players that I am, doubled my damage, which I'll probably not be able to get to because I don't have the OP champions. Like, let's see what, I'm sure that, yeah, he has Senna and Jock, right? A very strong combo to just cycle through turns. I'm guessing that he also has Operdin. I'm guessing there's Fina. I'm guessing there's all the OPs, right? Yeah, you have Teox here with Pauldrig. Again, that was the team that one of my clanmates ran. Very powerful. You have Fina, of course, even Ashnar. Very strong combo. Garrel is an interesting one. I didn't think that Garrel would kind of make the bill. Let's see what we have here. We have Lady Mikage with Harima, but this stage looks very tough, right? Even the best player in the world, so far only put out 110 million damage. And then, oh, you're telling me that Crypto only put out 42 million damage in stage 5? I think that's a big shocker. You can easily put in Operdin and boost that damage by at least double. So there you go. I'm giving you tips that even the rank 1 player in this leaderboard hasn't even used. This guy didn't use it either. Although this whisper damage, look at the whisper damage, 130 million. I think Klazak was a big bonus here, being able to bring in the 9-piece Pharaoh with all his debuffs. But you guys can see we have the Relentless set on the Queen of Hearts, Relentless set on the Ogren, Relentless set. Oh no, sorry, that's the 9-piece protection. But Relentless set on Queen of Hearts, Relentless set on Lady Mikage, right? This is how you abuse the damage. And again, you'll see very common themes here. Senna, Androck, Yox, Fina, Mikage, and whatever, right? This is a little bit of a surprising one. Newt doing 120 million damage is really surprising given the fact that max HP damage is capped. Oh no, but there's Androck, right? Androck, big carry in stage 1 and 4. Operdin, big carry in stage 5. Stage 3, Fina, big carry, right? You don't have specifically these champions. You're not going to do a lot of damage, but you're going to be able to at least complete the event. And hopefully that this has helped you to give some insights. But again, the one last thing I'll point out is that this event also has a rankings that isn't global. So this is just 50 players in a bracket of some sort, kind of like a regular tournament, but only 50 instead of 100. And if you do win this, you do get 50 more mythical fragments. Right now, I'm kind of blowing it out of the park. It looks like these guys don't have Senna teams. If you really, oh, this guy does have Senna, but he did a lot less damage. As you can see here, even though this guy ran pretty much a Titus team that would max damage, like Chimera, for example, still only did 500 million damage, whereas my Ninja team doubled that. So yeah, those are some tips that hopefully help you guys to make sure that you guys can max out this event, because it's fairly easy to do. You just have to make sure you max all the stages. You can do this in a day. You have 5 weeks to do it. So make sure you guys claim your free rewards, and I hope this video helped. But thank you guys for tuning in. If you liked the video, feel free to like and subscribe to the channel. I'd really appreciate the support, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. See you guys, have a good one, and peace out.